Good day, good morning, and good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar. So, let's see this. I'm your host, Johan Holmström. I'm a solutions engineer here at Acronis, and I will spend the next hour going through our solution, Acronis Cyber Protect 15, what it is, why we're doing it, and what we can and how it looks like. So I'll run into a demo as well of that one. So I will run through two polls throughout this hour. So I'll start the first poll now shortly, and then I'll run a second poll after I've done the demo before any Q&As. If you have any questions, please write them into the Q&A section, and I will respond to them under that section. So that said, let us do the primary poll. And let's continue on with the presentation. So a little bit overview about the agenda. So first, I'm just going to look at the company, Acronis, a little bit overview about that. Then go into why cyber protection is essential and what we mean with cyber protection. Then more drill into overview about the product, Acronis Cyber Protect. Then how do you get started? A little bit overview about the architecture. Going into the demo, I'll show you a live demo of what the interface looks like, how easy it is to get started, what you can see and what you can do within the portal itself, and then finalize this with a Q&A section. So Acronis, where are we? Where do we come from? What do we do? So Acronis has been around for about almost 20 years now. We have a dual headquarters. So we are a Swiss Singaporean company. So founded in 2003 in Singapore. That is where we have our international headquarters. And since 2008, we have a corporate headquarters in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. Acronis is a global company with more than 1,500 employees. We are in over 150 different countries, and we do have various types of locations where you can store our data. So when looking into the data centers, we do have data centers in about 33 different locations today, and we're looking into deploying them in over 100 different countries, or more than 100 countries over the coming 24 months. And the reason for doing this, obviously, is that you can use the Acronis solution, still store your data locally within the confinement of your country. In terms of our scale, growth, and reach, well, we have over $300 million in billings. Our business growth is 50% year over year. We do 100% in our cloud business. 100% of the Fortune 1000 companies are using some part of Acronis in their technology stack. We protect more than 1 million workloads and prevent more than 1 million attacks, and we have more than 9,000 different cloud partners. So we are a truly global company, and with the thing of being a local presence, we're close to where you are at. So we work out of 5 different pillars, if you will, called SAPAs. So these are safety, accessibility, privacy, authenticity, and security. Now, what do we mean with that? Well, that is when we're looking at data, not only should you be able to back this up, but if you're looking at safety, it should also be a reliable copy for recovery. It means that it should be an easy way of getting back to recovery of the data that you have backed up. Very easy way to do this by logging into the GUI or running that directly from an agent through CLI. Accessibility, well, obviously you should be able to access this from anywhere at any time. And this is also when you're looking at the overall solution where we do backup, but also things like anti-malware protection, patch management, vulnerability assessment, bureau filtering, EDR, all those things from within one user interface, makes it very easy and simple for you to access it and also then use it. And you use whatever parts of that when you want to. And then obviously you're paying only for the things that you're using, right? Makes it very, very simple. Privacy, obviously, we need to control the visibility and access, right? Who logs in of the system, who does what in the system, who adds a customer, who adds a device. What do you do with this one, right? So it is very important for us to minimize the risk that somebody logs into the system that shouldn't have access to the system by using things like two-factor authentication, etc., to minimize that risk. Authenticity, right? So it's not enough only to run backups of your data. You also need to verify the authenticity of this data. Did something happen to this data? Was it manipulated in any shape or form? So whatever we can do to help mitigate that risk and also prove the authenticity of data. And last but not least, obviously, is the security part, right? It should be reliable. It should be a simple way to mitigate any type of threats, right? Not only do you have anti-malware or malware coming into your system, but you can also have maybe viruses trying to delete your backup files. Let's say that you're only running a backup, well, and then you're doing a restore. Let's say that there is a threat that is not executed yet. It's just laying there latent. There are then features that we can do to scan backup files and remove any malicious content prior to doing a restore. So all of that comes into play called SAPAS. So that's the form that we're following: safety, accessibility, privacy, authenticity, and security. Now, why do we do this, and also what do we do, right? So Acronis initially kind of started off primarily doing backup, but what we're seeing over the period of time, right? But it's just increasing and more year over year. What we're seeing now are that endpoints and edge devices are under attack. Now, this became very prevalent with over the last 2 years or so when we with COVID and a lot of people were working from home, offices kind of closed down. And you didn't have a central IT department anymore managing all the end users' devices. So what happens then is that you can have different types of devices now accessing the same type of workloads. And what we're seeing now is that 68% say now the frequency of endpoint attacks has increased in 2020, and that was just when COVID started. So that is just ramping up even more. Average time to patch is 102 days from when there is an available patch. So if we can make things easier, automate these things, put them into the same protection plan, you run the backups, you do the vulnerability scan, then you run out then you just deploy the patches available to you, instead of trying to have one solution that will run your backups, another solution for anti-malware protection, a third solution for patch management. So to bring that down from the average time of 102 days into a lot quicker. And why is this important? Well, obviously, because then if there are new vulnerabilities, patches are there to mitigate that risk. So try to get your systems as safe as possible. Antiviruses, they miss on general basis 57% of the attacks. Well, most of that because you have signature-based solutions, which is really good for existing threats, but they're kind of useless for any new threats coming about. And then you need to have some other means of discovery. So what Acronis is doing, we're utilizing both a signature-based solution plus a artificial intelligence solution that we're working on basis of machine learning. So we have a rule book basically that we go through how do processes interact with one another? What do they look like? What's the entropy? What's the behavior analysis? And from that point of view, we then stop all of these attacks. Data growing, well, and since data is growing a lot faster than IT staff, it is difficult for IT staff to have a centralized organization and be able to control every single device that also is onto the network. hard drives, which is one of those things that a lot of enterprises not really thinking about, right? But 50% of hard drives die within 5 years. Now, you do have technologies like Smart, for example, to give you an understanding about where in the lifespan is that drive. But what we're doing as well is that we're utilizing that one, but also then adding some artificial intelligence into more predictive analysis on when does that drive actually die, right? So and then before that happens, then obviously you can steer it back up to somewhere else. You can get all the data off that machine prior to it failing, and then get a new system, and then do a restore of that data. So this is kind of the main reasons why we're doing this. It's make it easy for an administrative point of view, and to mitigate all of these various threats, right? Whether this is that somebody deletes a file, or that is actually an attack coming in from a malicious party that tries to either disrupt your data or steal data, for example, or just things like a hardware that is dying. So looking into the product that we're focusing right now, which is the Acronis Cyber Protect, current version is version 15. It is an enterprise platform, right, that we offer to you. So what do we have here? Well, automate protection. Basis there is that you set this up once, and then you can have a protection plan that is for all of your devices, instead of doing individual protection plans for individual devices, and then go in and change these, depends on what happens in the system. Just set this up, we'll run the backups, and then if there is anything, you can then easily restore the backups. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, you can either log into the interface here, or you can do that directly from the agent that is installed on the machine. Backup to the cloud or local, well, that is also the benefit of the solution, that it is very flexible where you want to store your data. Excuse me. Or do you want to replicate that data in between multiple locations? So if one location dies, there is always a secondary location where you can then restore your data from. CyberFit Score, this is a tool that helps you identify how secure individual devices are. So we rank these based on various categories, and we give them a CyberFit score. So then it's an easy way from an administrative point of view to just log in, get a score, and then you can see, or are there things that maybe that you have missed on this device. So it's not only that we rank them based on things that we have, but we also do things like rank them on, is there a firewall enabled or disabled on this one? Is it disk encryption on this machine, or is it not? So then you can log in then to the individual machine, enable these features to be as protected as possible. Antivirus and anti-malware protection. Again, as mentioned previously, that is also extremely important for you to be as protected as possible. So we do, as I mentioned, we do a signature-based solution, which is the fastest way of determining if there is something malicious or not, right? These are very good for existing threats where you have a signature that can kind of match that. But if you only rely on a signature, it is very simple to circumvent the signature by just really obfuscate some code. The signature does not catch it anymore, and then those malware can be executed freely within the system. Now, in order to mitigate that, we also have the option of doing a artificial intelligence solution. So the artificial intelligence and works in conjunction with machine learning. So we have a database really of how does processes interact with one another, what do they look like, what's the behavior. So if there is, let's say there is a ransomware attack, it comes in, it tries to encrypt files. Well, we monitor what is going on. We understand, is this a legit way of encrypting files, meaning that there's an administrator that wants to encrypt files, or is this a malicious way of then encrypting these files? And then based upon this one, we then stop the attack. URL filtering, which is really good if, let's say that you are an end user, you go to a website that has some sort of malicious content, right? Then what we will do is that we will block access to this one. So there is, again, minimize the risk that you will go to a website, there is some sort of malicious content, it's being downloaded to your machine, and then you put not only your machine at risk, obviously, but the entire network that machine is connected to at risk. What we also can do is we can either allow an end user to bypass our recommendation and continue onto the website. Obviously not recommended, but what you also can do is that you can specify that you're not even allowed to override our recommendation, and it will just be blocked. Then what you would have to do, if you deem that this is an okay website, legit website, does not host any malicious content, what you can do is obviously you can whitelist, or you can obviously also blacklist certain things, so we won't even check. Vulnerability assessment and patch management, obviously extremely important as well. So vulnerability assessment, just checking what are new vulnerabilities that are out there. You can manually obviously go around and find all of these vulnerabilities yourself, but what we're doing here is from one single interface, you will have access to all these various things. So you get the vulnerability assessment, you get the CVE code, you can go in there, read details, information about what is this vulnerability. And then as next step, once there's an available patch, just an easy way of automatically pushing out these patches to all of your devices. What we also can do with patch management, instead of manually having to run a snapshot or doing a backup prior to installing a patch, in case there would be something going on with that patch, causes some sort of distress of the system, what we can do is that we can do an automatic system state backup prior to installing any patch. Again, just to minimize that risk. And also, if something would happen, makes it easy to just revert back to the previous state the machine was at. Data protection map, which is very useful if you're doing backup and not doing backup on the entire machine, right? But maybe just doing backups on some files or some folders. You can specify then important extensions. So these are the files that I want to protect. I don't really care about all those others. What the data protection map will do is that it will go through all those devices, and it will just give you a visual representation of other files that are not protected, and then show you where does those files reside, and then you can automatically go in and protect them. It could be, for example, that you're backing up, let's say, a folder. The end user should save all the files in that folder, but they're not for some reason, right? And then it will just present then that you're missing some of these important files that you have specified. If you do an entire machine backup, obviously all those files are protected. Threat feed, also a very important feature. So we have analysts sitting in 3 locations around the world. So they sit in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. They sit in Singapore. They sit in Arizona, US. Monitor the world 24/7, and they monitor the world for both digital as well as physical threats. Now, what will happen there is that you can click on threat feed under dashboard. I'll show this when I show the demo. That will give you some details about what is going on. Is there maybe there's a new ransomware strain? Something goes on right within on the world that could put your data at risk. You could potentially just read this information and then manually figure out, okay, what do I need to do? Do I need to patch a system? Do I need to run a backup? Do I need to do something? Or you can let us decide. So we go through all the devices that you have, and then there is a recommended button that you can click, and then we will adjust to whatever things that we deem is necessary. It could be maybe you missed running a backup, or you haven't run a backup in a long time, or you haven't done a vulnerability scan or a patch management, stuff like that. And then we can then automatically just adjust to mitigate that risk as well. Last thing, threat feed. So remote wipe. So with remote wipe, what we can do with Windows 10 machines, and later what we can do is that, let's say this machine gets stolen, it's lost. You're concerned about the content of this machine. When that boots up, get internet access, we can then from within the console do a remote wipe and delete all that data that is present on that machine. So that is also a very, very useful tool. So how do you get started? Well, if you go to acronis.com, you go to or click on the Acronis Cyber Protect. This will come and where you can register to get your 30-day trial. Now, during that 30-day trial, there is no cost for that, obviously. So try all these features, look at what's available, try them all out. Just register here, and then you go to the next page. What happens to the next page is then you're putting into this account.acronis.com. You will also then get the download where you can download the solution itself. The accounts.acronis.com, this is where you will then have to register your different types of license keys that you want to have for the devices that you want to use as well. Two ways, and this you'll see this when you actually start up the installation. So two ways of doing the deployment. So you can either do the cloud deployment, or you can do the on-premise deployment. Now, there are some various features, depends on which one of these that you use. As you can see here, so if you're doing on-premise deployment, for example, this is the one that you should use. If you want to store any data onto tapes, you do need to do the on-premise deployment. There are some other things that we can do. There's also SFTP as a backup application, for example, some other various things. If you do the cloud deployment, then you don't need to install anything locally. Everything of that is controlled by Acronis. All the upgrades, all that stuff is controlled by Acronis. Obviously, you need to do that if you do the on-premise deployment. But then also we can offer things like cloud to cloud for Microsoft 365. And we can do Google Workspace. Also, there is the option of doing disaster recovery if you do the cloud deployment. Now, disaster recovery, obviously, that means that, let's say that you have some systems on site, something happens with the system, you can then get a virtual machine booted up in our data center. You can install stuff like VPN appliance. That means that you can still have the connectivity over the same subnet as you would locally, so they can still reach one another, even though some of those systems are run locally, some of those systems are run within our cloud. That is also available if you run the cloud deployment. Looking into the architecture, so this is the on-premise architecture. So what you would do now here, you would install the backup management server locally with the backup console. That's the one that you would log into as an administrator. You would push out agents to the individual devices, and you can store your data in the cloud. Could be our data center, could be a third-party data center. You can store your data locally if you want to. And again, here you can store your data onto tape. But the thing is, the backup management server that you install and manage locally. If instead looking at the hybrid solution or the cloud deployment, so what happens then is the backup management server is now deployed within the Acronis data center. So you do not need to worry about the installation. You do not need to worry about the upgrades of this one. You still log into it. From an interface point of view, it doesn't really look different. The difference is the address where you access it to. But from an administrative point of view, you're logging in, you see the same stuff, but again, that is now run within the Acronis data center. Now, you still install an agent on their machine, so you can do an agent less if you're talking about hypervisors. In terms of where to store your data, you can still store that within the data, our data center. Cloud location could be another data center. You can still store this data locally as well. Do remember though that if you want to store onto tape, you do need to have the on-premise deployment. Now, with that, I will go into show you the demo, show you what the portal looks like. So let's do like this, and actually just stop the initial poll as well. Let's see here. Okay, most are interested in both backup and security. All right, good. That is perfect, because then you're in the right webinar as well, right? So we can go through all of these things. So let me just change to my web browser. Let's do like this. Okay, so what I am logged in right now is the on-premise deployment. So as you can see on the address here, it points to, just Excuse me. There. So this is now the on-premise deployment. So I now have installed this locally. I point to the name, I can point to the IP address of the management portal. It goes to port 9877. And what I can see when I log in here, I start at the beginning, I have my dashboard. Now what the dashboard provides you is an overview about what you have within your system, what it looks like. And all of this is HTML5. So you can drag these around if you want to. You can add or remove different widgets. Depends on what you want to see, for example. You can go into, you can look at, okay, how much data have I backed up today instead of kind of going into the various devices. You can look at any of the existing vulnerabilities that are available. You can look at any patches that are ready to be installed. You can look at things like activities. What is going on? Well, okay, so today I've had 8 successful runs. There has been 2 failed runs. What is going on with the system? You can go into these various things. You can look at the usage of storage from here, for example. You can look at the various devices. And all of these things can be tailored to meet your needs. Depends on what do you want to see when you log into the system. The activities, obviously, can kind of drill down a little bit more. You see what is going on. Well, we have some failures going on here. You can see, you can filter these things if you want to see only successes, for example, if you want to see only things that have failed. So whatever you want to see here, you can drill down into the various things. So you get a full understanding about what is going on within the system. Are there any things that you maybe need to change here? Is there things that you need to open a support case for? So all of those things is very visible to you. The threat feed, now there are no active threats here, so all of those threats have already been mitigated, but this is where you will see any of the threats. And as I mentioned, these are both physical as well as digital threats, right? So it could be that there's an earthquake, for example, right? Or it could be that there are some new ransomware strains or viruses or anything like that. If there would be anything here, you can obviously you can click on one, get more details, or you can just click, there's an arrow and then a button, you click that one, and then we will go and change the things that we would recommend, right? And again, that could be running a backup, doing a patch, whatever that might be in order to mitigate that threat. Devices holds all the devices that you're protecting, right? Whether these are physical machines, VMs, hypervisors, databases, websites, phones, really anything that you protect are listed under devices. And as you can see here, we do create corresponding folders for what it is. For example, if this is SQL, then there will be a folder created for SQL. If this is Office 365, then again, there will be created then a corresponding folder for 365. In order to add something, so add a new device, for example, that you want to protect, you have this add button up here to the right-hand corner. You click the add, you select what do you want to install, right? So go through this list. If this is maybe a physical machine VM, you select the operating system up here. If you want to add a hypervisor, just select which one you want to have. If you want to select any particular databases, just select the agent that you want to install here. You can also obviously, when you register, so when you install these things and you register, you do need to register with a username password. But what you can do is that you can have this registration token. If you want to deploy this on multiple machines, just generate a token. And then when you then instead of putting in username password, you can just register them with this token. There is a default lifespan of that one of 3 days, but you can increase this as well if you want to deploy this over a longer period of time. The plan, this is where you would specify the protection plan of various things, right? So what I would do if I have now, I've added some devices, I want to go in and maybe then create a plan. Now this plan includes what you need to do for your devices. And here you can do add one plan for multiple devices. Let's say you have multiple devices, they want to, maybe all of them want to do an entire machine backup, you want to do anti-malware protection. Instead of creating individual plans for individual devices, create one plan, and then you just go here, add devices, and then you add the corresponding devices that you want to have for this one. So you can give this a name that is more relevant to yourself, what you want to have, and you can enable or disable certain services by just clicking this button here. Now, if I would do this, well, then I'm not running backup on these phones. Maybe I'm just running anti-malware protection on these machines, for example. But for now, we're leaving all these enabled. When it comes to backup, obviously you can create anything from entire machine. You can go into individual files or folders. You can do to disk or volumes. Continuous data protection, that allows you to you set up your schedule for the backup, but let's say that you run this once every day or once every 6 hours or so. What continuous data protection will allow you to do is that you can then specify applications. So there are some predefined applications here that you can see, or you can go in and specify maybe a folder or so. And then what happens is that we will do a backup of the last save that you do of these applications or files or folders. We will not keep multiple versions of this. So it's not a versioning, but we do have a way then of doing backups of the last save, which is also very, very handy. So you have that one, and then in conjunction of setting up the schedule. Where to back up? So you can obviously specify this one if you want to do this. Now, again, this is the on-premise, so I do have some tape options here. If you would do the cloud deployment, you would not have the options of adding tape. You can specify if you want to run this into a cloud location, or you can specify some other locations that you want to have, or you can add different types of locations here as well. Depends on where you want to store your data. You specify your schedule, and as you see here, there are some predefined values, but you can really specify whatever you want here. When you want this to run, you can schedule this one to run every 10 minutes if you want to. By default, we use the always incremental. So that what happens then is that initially you would start creating a full backup, and then any subsequent backups would just be incremental backups that will be an append to that single file. We do compression and deduplication within the backup set as well. So we will try to reduce any type of redundant data, if you will, or maybe not redundant data, but duplicate type of data. You can also do a little bit features here or options that, for example, that only run your backups when users are logging off the system, for example, or if you have a lot of remote users and you don't want them to run a backup when they're on battery power, so you can just add things like that. For example, if you have a lot of users that are on laptops, for example, and traveling a lot. In terms of retention, there are again some predefined values, but you can specify really whatever you want. You can also go in here and change maybe the number of backups, or you can do that you want to keep your backups there forever, and then you can manually then go in and delete backups as you see fit. If you do, I'm sorry, the encryption part. So by any backup runs from where the agent is installed to the location. So all this goes through over SSL. So that is encrypted in transit. What this allows you to do is also do data at rest encryption and also specify password. When you need to do a restore, you need to enter that password. We do not save the password. So you need to have some sort of process in place in order to save your own passwords. If you run any types of databases, I do suggest that you run the application aware. This will benefit you when you do need to do a restore, because then you can read out parts of the database directly from the backup. Otherwise, you do need to restore to a machine and then read out the parts that you want to restore. So that is very, very useful as well. Coming down to the anti-malware protection engine. So as I mentioned, we do have a signature-based solution as well as an AI engine solution. So if looking at the this thing called active protection, which is primarily there for ransomware, but it's really good for any type of zero-day attacks, right? So let's say zero-day attack, something that we do not yet have a patch for. So what we're doing is that when you install the agent, we reserve roughly 10% of usable capacity, and we have this as our service cache. Now, let's say that there is a ransomware attack coming into your system. Let's say that we do not know what this is, right? We have not seen it before. So we need then to understand what is going on. So the agent monitors what is going on, all the changes to files. Let's say this is a ransomware attack, tries to encrypt files. Obviously, in order for us to learn and understand, we need to let it execute for a period of time. So it will start encrypting a number of files. Now, as that is doing that, we're then looking into the way that he's doing that, the interaction, the behavior, again, as I mentioned, the entropy, what it's actually look like inside the file that is doing the encryption. And then the AI engine is working together with, basically it goes through a rule-based book and kind of goes through and tries to understand what is going on. When it comes to the conclusion that this type of encryption is malicious, it will block this threat. By the time that it will block that threat, maybe a bunch of files are already encrypted, right? That could be 20 files, that could be 10 files, right? It depends on the sophistication of that threat, and depends on obviously how long time it takes for us to determine that that is malicious. Now, what we will do, since the agent monitors all the changes, what we will do with the service cache is that we will then revert them back into the state that they were prior to being encrypted. So from an end user point of view, when you're looking at your screen, you will see your files that has the file extensions, then you will see them change into an encrypted state, and then you will see them change again, revert back to the state that they were prior to being encrypted. As from an administrative point of view, from an end user point of view, you don't need to do anything. This is done automatically, and it's done within seconds. So unless you're actually looking at the files, you won't even notice it. Now, obviously, the sizes of those files can be larger than service cache. Now, so then what do we do? So there might be files where we cannot just revert them back from cache. Now, since the agent is the one that is responsible for running the backup, as well as responsible for understanding what files are encrypted, it's an easier way of then restoring those files from a previously made backup. Compare this if you would have two vendors, right? One for backup, another one for ransomware protection. Then you need then to maybe that one will also stop the threat, but then you need to understand what files are still encrypted, and then go back to your backup vendor and try to understand, okay, these files, where did they reside, and then try to restore them. So it's an easier way to just restore those files back to a working state, and not coming in a situation where you need to pay your ransom to anybody to just give you the decryptor key. What we also do, things like self-protection, which is also very useful. So self-protection, that then blocks access, will give you an access denied to anything that is not signed by Acronis. So if you have something that comes in and tries to maybe store your backups locally, tries to delete your backup files, it will then give an access denied to anything. You can obviously allow specific processes to modify backups if you want to as well, but then you need to specifically allow these processes. So that is very, very useful too. Other things that we do, things like the real-time protection. So what we can do here also when we're looking into real-time protection is that you can either then have these on various modes, right? By default, this is on smart access. So this could be if you would put this on execution, then we're scanning, but we're not really doing anything until it actually executes. Now, there could be some viruses, some malicious content that will just lay still and not do anything for a long period of time, and then we will not catch it until it actually executes. And you can specify the schedule scan for this one as well as you see fit, right? Well, you see with all these different schedule times, what I would recommend is that you run your backups on one time, you run the anti-malware protection scanning on one time, you run the patch management part on another time set as well. When it comes down to URL filtering, so as I mentioned, by default, we have the always ask user. So what happens then is that we block access, but there is a way to override our recommendation. As you can see up here, if this is through a secure website, SSL, this is blocked immediately. But what we can do is that if we would put this to block, that means that those are always blocked, right? There is no way of overriding our recommendation. And obviously you can go in here and specify various types of exclusions, whether you would whitelist or blacklist any of these trusted URLs. What we also can do, and that obviously does not mean that they're all malicious, what we also can do is that we can go in and allow or disallow various types of categories. So let's say that I want to deny any file sharing category. Well, then obviously any try to access any file sharing category will then be blocked. Now, obviously, again, that doesn't mean that those are all malicious content on those files. The way that URL filtering also works, and the way that kind of our multi-layered approach works, is that let's say that you would have there is a script running. Maybe that script comes through an email or something. Maybe there's a script running, maybe a PowerShell script running, right? We allow PowerShell to execute because that is a legit process. Let's say that that PowerShell script then executes a web browser. Again, allows it to execute, but we do monitor what is going on. Let's say that that web browser then goes to a malicious website, then we block access to the website. So it is a really useful tool, not only from an end user point of view that you actually go to a website, but also from things coming in through scripts, could come in through emails, for example, and tries to kind of download some sort of command and control solution. Windows Defender or Security Essentials, what this means is really that if you're running these, obviously, if you're running any type of other third-party anti-malware engine, you should not run ours. I would highly recommend that you run ours, though, obviously, due to the before mentioned reasons where you can, the benefit of having one agent doing both the anti-malware protection as well as the backup part. But if you're running either of these, what this means is that you can control them from within the same user interface. You can specify the schedule, you can specify all those things from within the same interface. Vulnerability assessment and patch management, highly related. So vulnerability assessment, obviously we do, or not obviously, but we do for Microsoft products, but we also do for third-party products as well as for Linux packages. Now, third-party products are somewhere around, I think, 250 third-party products, again, that we scan for vulnerabilities. And here as well, you can specify the schedule. And just to reiterate that one, highly recommend that you specify different times for running the backup and more protection, vulnerability scan, patch management, so that you don't run all of them at the same time. Patch management. So what you can go in here, you can change some things with, if you look at Microsoft products, for example, you can either do all updates as you see fit, or you can either do all updates, or what you can do is, for example, go into specific products. Let's say I want this product. You can then look at the various categories that you're interested in, look at the severity, and you can also do an approval status, because you can go in manually, kind of try out various patches, put them into an approval status, and then when we do the automatic updates, we can then maybe only push out the patches that you have previously approved, for example. So this is also very useful, or you can specify that I only want to have security critical, but for all my products. Same thing here with third-party products. You can also in here specify various types of third-party products. What is it they want to update, the severity of these, same thing there. You can specify the approval status. This thing here, the pre-up backup, this is the one I was talking about earlier, where so instead of you manually having to go in and do a backup or a snapshot, we will do a system state backup if you enable this one before installing a patch. So if something happens, just revert back to the state it was prior to installing the patch. Finally, the data protection map. So here you can specify the various extensions that you want to, that are important to you. And again, there's a schedule there. But if you're running the entire machine, obviously you are protecting all of those extensions. So it's not really relevant to you. Now, as you see, so all of those things are available within one protection plan. You set that up, it runs for all your devices. And obviously with these ones, you can obviously have multiple protection plans. If you try to create a protection plan that overlaps with another one, it will give you an error message. So you would have to, because you can set up one protection plan for doing backup, then you can set up another protection plan for doing, for example, patch management or vulnerability assessment, etc. But you can run all of them through the same protection plan. There are also some other options here. Maybe backup replication, for example, where you can do, let's say they have tape devices and you run your backups to some disks, right? And then what you can specify is on a period of time, you can then specify that, okay, now I want to replicate some of these backups from my disk to my tape. So you can specify various plans of doing that stuff as well. So maybe you run your daily backups, but you want to replicate maybe once a week or so to your tape. You can specify things like that. Backup storage, that is where you will find all your various backups. So if you want to go in and delete any of these backups, we will then list the various locations that you have here. You can go into, let's say I want to go into my cloud storage. What do I have here? Well, I have a bunch of backups. I can click any of these backups. I can show all the various types of backups that I have within here. I can also then go into any of these and then do delete of these backups. We'll see when this loads. Takes a little bit of time. Let's close this down. You also have this delete button here. So you can go into and delete either the entire backup set, or you could go in and delete individual backups as well of that backup set if you want to. So all of that is available here to you. Under settings, this is where you will find all the agents. So if there are any agents that you need to update, they will have this exclamation mark. You can then select this agent or select this device and then go into update agent from here. This is also where we will do the tape management, for example. So if you have tapes attached to this one, this is where you will set up these tape devices. Reports now. So what you can do with these reports. So there are some predefined reports as well, or you can create your own reports. Now, if you want to add a report, maybe I want to do a complete custom report. I can then start with a blank report. I can add my various widgets. Well, I want to show some activities. You can show here exactly what you want to show on a device group. Well, I only want to see my VMware, for example. That's all I want to have. And then I want to do a widget that shows my activities summary. What you can do with this one, then you can go into settings and then you can schedule this one. So depends on how often do you want to send this, what do you want to send, what should it look like, who should you send this to, and then you can just click save. So then users here will get maybe a daily recap about what is going on, or send this once a week or so. So what I also want to mention is that obviously you can have multiple sub-organizations here. So if you set up this for different departments, for example, then you can have various types of organizations with equal one department, and then you can go in here and go from one department to another department. So you would then tie the various devices into various types of departments. So with that, that is the end of the demo. So let's stop this share. Let's start a new poll. And let's go into Q&A. Let's see if there are any questions in the Q&A. Okay, I have no questions here. Oh, I have some questions in the chat. Let's see here. Yes, this was only about the recording. Yes, the recording will be shared tomorrow. So if there are no questions, then I want to thank you for participating in this webinar. I hope it was informational for you. And do please sign up, get the 30-day trial, try this out. Do let us know if there is anything else. And I thank you very much for participating.